Hello, I just finished reading The Paleontologist by Luke Dumas, and I am obsessed. It was just amazing. I loved it. This is the first book of this kind I've seen. I haven't seen any fiction books about a paleontologist or paleontology. So I saw the cover and was like, oh, I need this. I was at a little bookstore in Providence, and I was like, that has to come home with me. And then it was just so good. To give you a little TLDR, it's about this paleontologist who goes back to a museum that he went to as a child to work and, figure out some things. The back of the book says, it mentions that his sister went missing, and that's kind of why he returns to the museum to try and get some answers. And, I started reading the book and I'm like, how is he possibly gonna get answers? It's been like 20 years. So the book had a lot of very real themes, which I really liked about it. I loved like the realism. So he talks a little bit about like coming from poverty. He like talks about like memories he has and like how he's haunted by the loss of his sister. I found it to be very immersive and well written. They use some paleontological terms that I know, like I knew pretty much all the dinosaurs they mentioned. Like there's a Quetzalcoatlus in the museum, and they explain certain paleontological things, like going in the field and like setting up a museum display, which I thought was really cool. And the main character's gay. It's not on the back of the book. I didn't like find it in an LGBT section. It was just like a really nice surprise. Yeah, there was a decent-ish amount of LGBT representation. One of his co-workers at the museum uses she, they pronouns. Simon's gay, and there's a couple other gay characters. And the gay representation was really nice too, and it wasn't like his whole personality. Like it was just kind of like a side thing, and he talked a little bit about his ex and how they were in similar fields. It was really nice. And I see a lot of myself in Simon. Like he knew he wanted to be a paleontologist since he was a kid, and he's kind of short and he's gay. Like I also have read this book every single day since I started it. It probably took me less than a week to read. I've just been consistently reading it every day. Like before I go to bed, I get my flashlight and I just read, and it's been amazing. I love it. It's truly so good. I couldn't put it down, and it's added fuel to my aspiring paleontologist flame. Some of Simon's co-workers, a lot of them were unpleasant, but like, and on purpose. Like you were meant to not like them, but they were, well written, and they had complex personalities, and some of them had kind of like an arc, some of them just who they were who they were. On the outside, you see like this prestigious museum. Actually, we'll get to that, but an outsider viewing any place of work, you don't really see what goes on behind the scenes and like the corruption that goes on. And at one point, Simon finds a hidden room in the basement of the museum, which is where his office is. And he finds a hidden room, and I thought it made a lot of sense for the story, but it was also like a nice little bit of foreshadowing for like the other secrets that were to later be revealed. And the directors of the museum were keeping certain secrets about what had happened in the past, trying to keep a good public image and a little bit conspiracies as there is. So the book takes place during the pandemic. It was probably written in 2020, 2021. It was just like so surreal to read about something that I experienced not that long ago. Some critiques said that like they were sick of being reminded of COVID, but I don't think it was overdone. Like he talked a little bit about like, oh, this person wore a mask, and then like the museum shut down because of COVID and then was trying to raise funds. Speaking of funds, the museum doesn't give Simon a lot of like money to do stuff, and like the lab is super outdated. He's expected to get this big project done, and he doesn't have the people or the tools to get it done when they need it to be done. And he's like, I guess I need to find a couple of volunteers because he asked for help, and the museum is like, no, you have to figure it out. Like, we don't have money. Which is like, jobs are just like that. They put certain jobs. They put these expectations on you, and they don't give you the tools to meet those expectations. One of the characters, Fran, she works at the museum, and at the beginning, Simon isn't like a big fan of her. She's kind of annoying. She like thinks a lot of herself. It really happens at the end. They become closer because of how things played out, and you really get a sense for her as a full human and not just, oh, this is my coworker. because you only see a small part of someone at work, and I just really liked the complexity of her, and because people are complex like that, like you don't see every side of them at work. In tough times, the way people truly are can come out. You understand why she is the way she is. She was a good character. Simon does talk a little bit about his privilege in like the scientific / museum / workforce. Being a white male who's straight passing, he does acknowledge his privilege. And at the end, he tries to use it to help people that were wronged. And I know there's a lot of white knight narratives and like savior kind of stuff, but I didn't get that vibe. He did genuinely care about the people he wanted to help and didn't want credit for it. There's a lot of twists and connections that I didn't expect, like with the old paleontologist that worked in Simon's position before he got there. There's a common trope in media where the main character thinks they have everything figured out. And it makes sense, but you're like, no, that makes too much sense. Like, it can't be that easy. Like, there has to be something else. And this book did that. I don't feel like the author did it just to trick you. The way Simon came to that conclusion made sense. Like, anyone would have come to that conclusion based on the evidence he had. And then there's the big reveal. The book has been working up, the two main conflicts converge. And then there's the big reveal, and it makes sense. At first when it was revealed, I was like, are you kidding me? And it felt almost out of nowhere, but then the person explains what had happened and how they got there, and it's like kind of crazy. And then I'm reading this. I read this today. So I'm reading what had happened when his sister disappeared and how these characters are involved. And I'm like, no way. And like, the little things that you were questioning make sense. Simon finds a letter in his mailbox, and it's like, where did this letter come from? The diaries he's been reading from the old paleontologist makes sense. Everything falls together really satisfyingly. The book ended very satisfyingly, but was not perfect. Real life isn't that way. Like, not everything is tied up in a pretty little bow. Sometimes killers get away, sometimes you don't get justice, sometimes you don't have answers, and sometimes you get answers, sometimes you get justice, and you're still left unsatisfied because of the trauma you've gone through. And at the end of the book, Simon still has his trauma that he's learning to deal with it, but he still carries that. Of course he is. His sister disappeared in a horrible way, and now he knows the full depths of what she experienced, and it's really sad. There's also some supernatural elements in the book that was introduced really early on. And at first, I was like, okay, a little weird. Don't know if I get it. But then it was just like the normal, and it made sense and really added to the story. The story would not have been the same without it. And it's a book. It doesn't have to be super realistic. Like, it's a work of fiction. But I loved it. The ghost elements played such an important role. But it also wasn't like overdone. It was introduced kind of gradually. Simon would not have figured out what happened and would not have made the scientific discoveries he had made without the ghost kind of elements. Sometimes the supernatural elements felt a little far-fetched, but like, it's ghosts, of course it's gonna feel far-fetched if you haven't seen a ghost in your life. So like, that part wasn't like realistic, but it was fun, and I appreciated the other realism about like real life stuff. So I thought it was a really fun and interesting touch, and I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. It was amazing. I'm gonna reread it, and I'm gonna leave it a really good review on Goodreads. So yeah, I highly, highly recommend, and I will definitely be reading his other book when I get a chance. And if for some reason he sees this video, hi, I love your work. Thanks for watching. Bye.